Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Wrap it up, my friends. 13 seconds left to go. Huskers are going to win for the first time in Omaha since Jake Muehlheisen did in 2004 in an NIT game against the Blue Jays, and for the first time in the regular season winning in Omaha for the first time since 1995. Griesel brings it across the timeline. Take that monkey off our backs. The Huskers at the horn, winning this puppy. 10 points, 63-53 over Creighton.
I love hearing that. I've been growing up listening to Kent Pavelka kill it for years and years and years doing Nebraska basketball. I love hearing joy in Kent Pavelka's voice. Nebraska, just like we told you, kidding. Wow.
Yeah, we were wrong.
A lot of us were wrong. Welcome to the Fred Ball bandwagon, right? That thing's crowded as all get out. You get a big win, there's a thundering herd you hear behind you, and that's everybody running back to Nebraska basketball. Good for the Big Red. Good for the Big Red to get a win like that against Creighton. I know Creighton fans are angry and distraught. It's one thing to lose to Arizona in a tight ball game, another thing to lose to Texas on the road in a tight ball game. But man, little brother coming into your joint, and I know that rubs some Nebraska fans wrong, but I think that's probably the Creighton mentality towards Nebraska. And it was a rock fight. It was a new Nebraska style, but you'll take it if you're a Big Red fan because, well, the other way wasn't working. We were trying to outscore them. Good to have you in on a Monday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. And we are loaded up. We will talk Nebraska Creighton with a former assistant at Nebraska and Hall of Fame high school coach Jeff Smith in about 15 minutes. Get Coach Smith's take on last night and beyond for Nebraska. Also, his thoughts on Creighton. A lot of season left for the Jays to regroup. They're still damn talented. Can watch this show. We're streaming on different platforms here on StreamYard. So if you like listening, great. If you want to watch the video portion of Hail Varsity Radio, get into it. Can do so on ESPN Lincoln Facebook, at ESPN Lincoln Twitter, Omaha 590, their Twitter app as well, and the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Can check out Coffee and Cream there, always morning 7 to 9. So, hey, you get an upset win, and it feels great. But the bigger picture is we dive into the matchup and the win yesterday for Nebraska and Fred Hoiberg. We'll talk portal as well, as Nebraska now up to 11 players that have entered the portal. We'll check in with Charlie McBride in less than an hour. What's his take on in-state recruiting? And Coach Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, heading to Uncle Charlie's alma mater, Colorado. That's the other big news of the weekend, is Coach Prime making his impression felt. Jay Moore with us at 5:25 to talk some Husker football and NFL. Numbers to get in. Can join us today on Hail Varsity at 466-3776. 466-3776. Toll free where you hear us around the state. 1-800-825-5865. Can email the show, Chris at hailvarsity.com. And also tweet at us, Chris Schmidt at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. You texted me about the 12-minute mark of the second half as I was grilling, but I had my phone out and I'm watching it. Did a little Christmas shopping yesterday. And okay, Nebraska's always maintained the lead. Even if Creighton had put a little bit of a spurt together, a couple of consecutive baskets, Nebraska would have an answer. the reshaping that has gone on with Nebraska basketball is fantastic. You think of Mel Tucker and how he hit a home run 2 years ago with Kenneth Walker and the right portal dudes. Well, it's more common in college basketball to flip over a roster, and you've seen Fred Hoiberg try and find the right fit the previous 3 years. You get some NBA guys, you get some freak athletes that can create a Verge, right? A McGowan's. You go on paper and on film and say, man, those guys are special. They're athletes. They can do a lot of things with the ball. But can you get buy-in from a team? In the first couple of years with Nebraska basketball, a lot of foam and no beer. Okay, are you willing to do the little things to win basketball games? Are you willing to be physical? Are you willing to be selfless? Are you willing to box out? Are you willing to play defense? Because defense is going to win, a lot like Big Ten football. Defense is going to win in college basketball. Look at Texas Tech before guard left, and look at what kind of a different animal Texas is now with the right mentality. And Nebraska seems to have that because you got a culture changer in Sam Griesel. Is he going to be the fastest or the best shooter on the floor all the time? No. But he'll find a way to get it done, and Elijah, he'll outwill you. And I love the two-man YMCA old man ball game that you got to see with the pick and the roll and Griesel and Derek Walker. And you're so happy for a guy like Derek Walker because he's a stand-up guy, and he was able to drag in some of the big fellas from Creighton and off the dribble make some tough shots despite giving up 3 or 4 inches.
Well, that two-man game, as you mentioned, it finally feels like Fred Hoiberg might have a recipe for success moving forward. I'm not saying that it's good enough
It's one game.
It's one game. I'm not saying it's going to be good enough to get Nebraska above 500, but you've seen it a couple times this year, and you saw it previously without Derek Walker, and now with Derek Walker in the equation, it looks like a different picture. The fact that you can go either pick and roll and get some good looks for yourself, or you can just post up Sam Griesel against a smaller guard, let him back down, then wait for Derek Walker's help, or Derek Walker's defender to go help.
Then go
give
find
him
Derek.
a spot, go find Derek Walker, and it's working with consistency. Nebraska killed Creighton on points in the paint, just doing that. And then, you know what, if they're going to try to collapse the defense, try to take that away, you have some shooters that I trust around the perimeter, not to be, all-American type guys, but good enough that they'll be able to knock down some shots.
Shot once in a while.
Kisei, CJ, Rashawn Gary, guys that I trust every once in a while. They're not going to be JJ Redick behind the three-point line, but they're going to hit enough shots that it's going to make the defense honest.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
And it's going to give Nebraska a chance to win basketball games, and then combine it with Creighton's poor shooting night, which was both poor shooting and also good defense from the Huskers. And you see the result. This Husker basketball team looks like there's something to be feared, and it starts on the defensive end, just as we all expected 3 years ago whenever Fred Hoiberg got hired. Whenever this thing pops, it's going to pop because of Fred Hoiberg's defensive acumen in building a defensive roster. We all expected that 3 years ago.
Listen, you have work ethic and blue. You have work ethic and blue collar, and Fred's an offensive guy, but he has made the necessary change. We'll take your calls here in a minute. But you make the necessary change, you get the buy-in, and then you get the bodies. And it's Griesel, it's Walker, it's a guy like Gary, Bandamel. I mean, you go down the list, and it was far from a pretty ball game. It was far from a perfect ball game, but it was a gutsy ball game. And Nebraska showed some things on the road against number 7 that can travel, right? The defensive effort and mentality, but they showed poise, right? You've had moments where Nebraska's not been poised in the Hoiberg era. Not his fault, but his product. You have moments where the team's been undisciplined. How many crazy, stupid shots that you wouldn't even take in horse have you seen some of Fred's offenses take? Lots. Have you seen grit all the time? No. And you saw all 3. And you got to go to the 6-minute mark, and Jacob Padilla, dear friend from Hale Varsity, asked this question in the post game. And he talked about 6 minutes, 30 seconds left. Creighton's getting a little bit of a flow, and it's got cut down to 5. Okay, and you're like, oh, danger time. Here's where Creighton makes the final push. Okay. And what happens? Griesel's able to answer with an and one. That's huge. Absolutely huge. And it's, Nebraska's won, I think, 3 in a row against ranked teams, or at least 2 in a row, where they won at Ohio State last year to end the year. They won at Wisconsin, and then they just won at Creighton. So it was in them, but it was too little too late a year ago. Got a whole different roster now, but they found a way last night. Poll question is up. What did you enjoy more as a Nebraska fan? Beating Iowa in football or the win over Creighton last night at CHI? Who's with us?
We got Streaker.
Streaker. Put some clothes on, baby. How you doing?
Schmitty, what's going on? I know Nick jumped into the porthole. He didn't have a chance to talk about Nebraska. Women had a big win yesterday. You haven't talked about it yet. They upset number 20, Maryland.
I know they did. We were getting there. But as far as what's crazier to have happen, Amy Williams has beaten ranked teams before. Nebraska hasn't beaten Creighton since, dare I say, the Bush administration.
I thought they should get a little love. I never heard Nick talk about them at all, and that's why I'm calling in. Don't forget about them, please.
Will not. We're talking to Markowski tomorrow, brother.
Okay, and maybe interview some of the girls once in a while.
We'll take that under advisement, my friend.
Thanks, Smitty. Great show.
Appreciate you. There he is. Yeah, Amy Williams getting doused with water.
Well, we were talking about it this morning. I came in for the morning hookup here locally, and it was the first time both the men's and the women's basketball teams have won against a ranked foe since No-Sit Sunday on the same day.
That's awesome.
First time, what is that, 8 years? That's
2014. Yeah. And if you sell your No-Sit Sunday tickets, you are still collecting interest on what you made on that seed. Who's with us?
We got Jim.
Jim, thanks for calling, bud. Go ahead.
Hey, yeah, it's just, it's so much fun to watch Walker, because that kid's a baller. Mm-hmm. And now they're playing old basketball the way it should be played. Move the basketball, play good defense underneath, and you're going to win some ball games.
Well, you've got one big component there, and rebound. How many straight games is that now Nebraska winning the rebounding battle? It's phenomenal.
When I played ball back in the 70s, you blocked out. That's what you did. That was your job, And you
had all 5 guys on the floor rebounded, I'm sure.
Yeah, and but no, I just love to watch this team. It looks like a good ball team. They move the basketball. You don't dribble a basketball, you pass it, right?
Mm-hmm. Jim, totally agree with you.
And you block out.
Yeah,
you block out, and it's basic basketball.
You do the little things that you're supposed to do.
It leads to big results.
Yeah, I'll shut up. But that's just basketball.
Jim, appreciate you tuning in, man. Thanks for the phone call, and yeah, good stuff from Jim and old school basketball, like old time hockey. I love it. No, good for Nebraska, right? And it's one win, it's one ball game, but it's something that you have been starving for, because the world that wears red and white, they go to PBA, you want it to work for Fred. You love Fred. Fred's a stand-up dude. He's a pro. He knows his stuff. Year 4 now, you have your roster constructed to be gritty and tough. And it all starts with a kid. I mean, I loved watching and covering East ball games when Griesel was there. Mm-hmm. We have enough talent in this building that there's so many good people to do play-by-play for high school basketball that we get to see a lot of different kids over the years. And it was so much fun rolling over to 70th and A for a number of years, watching Griesel do his thing at Lincoln East and then do well in the Summit League. And it's so much fun if you're a Nebraska fan and if you're a Lincolnite to see Sam Griesel back home.
Well, more fun for you than for me. My senior year was his senior year at East, so he laid the wood on Southeast once. So more fun for you than for me.
I'm sure you weren't taunting in the student section. Who's with us?
We've got Moose.
Moose, get some salsa ready, some victory salsa. How you doing?
Oh, man, I'm still a little giddy. Forgive me. But whether I like to admit it or not, I've been going to Husker basketball games for 40 years. It's as good a defensive performance as I've seen, period.
Mm-hmm.
the rotation was getting there. It's been close this year, but there were some guys slow getting to the rotation when you're playing this style of defense, and we were leaving wide open shots. Now, there were a few yesterday that I felt sure, and this is just years of being ingrained in me, that I felt sure the threes were going in for Creighton, and they didn't. But more often than not, we had hands in the face. We were making them alter their shots. The defense rotation was getting there. The rebounding was incredible. We just were getting rebounds you're supposed to get. You know what I mean? It's not giving teams 4 and 5 looks per possession. They're missing shots, and Gary's ferocious.
He was awesome on the glass.
Well, your two leading rebounders were Sam Griesel and Juwan Gary.
Yep. And guys are getting the rebounds. We've got the mismatches. Clearly, we're just a totally different team with Derek. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't be happier for that guy. I mean, like you said it, Schmidt, stand-up guy, and he is. We've met him. We've interacted with him. Same thing with Sam. The pictures of Sam hugging his parents after the game. I mean, it means something to these guys. Mm-hmm. Vandermel's a lockdown defender. You got these pieces, like you said, and they care more about the team than they do about their individual
Moose,
stuff.
we're up against a break. Thank you for chiming in, partner.
Appreciate you guys.
Enjoy the win. Enjoy the win. Coach Jeff Smith, his thoughts on Creighton, Nebraska next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity Monday edition, presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. More calls, reaction to Nebraska's upset over Creighton. We'll dive into Coach Deion Sanders in Boulder with Coach McBride, and emails chris@hailvarsity.com. Longtime assistant. He's lived this rivalry between Nebraska-Creighton when Nebraska was going to the NCAA tournament. Jeff Smith with us now, and Hall of Fame high school coach for a number of years. Coach, did you end up going last night? Did you watch it on TV?
Yeah, I just watched it on TV. I like taking notes and drawing up some of their sets, and both teams ran some really good sets. And Nebraska ran a couple when they needed to. Great backdoor play for Sam late when they needed something to happen, and so I thought Fred called a fantastic game offensively.
Well, you guys both watched on TV. I just want to say you guys totally missed out on Kent Pavelka jinxing Creighton in the pregame. Where
I have the radio on. I have the radio on.
So tell me,
have kids on.
Mule. What will Kent do? Was there a live chicken and Jobu's rum or what?
So pregame, they're introducing Creighton's lineup, and Trey Alexander gets introduced, and he's giving everyone fist bumps, and he comes down to the Nebraska broadcasting table and gives KP a fist bump. And Pavelka says, I don't know why he's fist bumping me. I hope he misses all his shots today. And then he goes 25% from the field. So
it was good. Well, 5 of 29 again for the Creighton starters from beyond the arc, and contest, get in their face, and let's see if they think about it a little bit because they shot horrible against Texas. Coach Smith, your assessment here last night, what the win can do for this team, but overall, is it just one game, or could this be something bigger for Nebraska basketball this year?
Well, I think it could be something bigger. I mean, really, it's 3 in a row, and now you beat a top 10 team. Obviously, Creighton's kind of in a shooting funk right now, which a lot of teams go through, and I still think Creighton's a Sweet 16, maybe even Elite 8 team. I think they have that kind of talent, but they're just not playing that way right now, and shots aren't falling. But for Nebraska, I think they've found a formula right now, at least, until Big Ten teams can take it away. But they're found a formula with Walker. And we said a week ago, we thought that they ended the season kind of going through Walker, and now they're going through him again. And he's just a very efficient player. He's physical. He's steady, shooting 73% from the field. I was a little surprised that they let him go to his right hand as much as they did yesterday. They let him get right, and he's obviously, right-handers are usually better doing that. And I was kind of surprised that they kept letting him do that. Kalkbrenner really struggled with that, and he got his shoulder in his chest, and so he couldn't block shots, and it started with him. The thing I love about this team right now, though, is we have not questioned their effort in any of their games. They've given effort. Even St. John's, when they're struggling second half, they didn't stop giving effort, and they try to climb back in it. And last night was a full 40-minute effort, and I thought a very consistent game, and I thought they had a great game plan. I thought they really got 4 guys back on defense and took away the break and made them play half court. They attacked Kalkbrenner. Texas showed them a little of that, I think. They kept them off the offensive boards. They made Kaluma and really the rest of the team shoot threes and try to beat us from there. They just couldn't do it last night. So I thought the game plan was fantastic.
Now, offensively, though, Coach Smith, Nebraska only shooting 12 3-pointers on the game. I didn't see that one coming, and then they go and just dominate Creighton points in the paint. What do you see offensively, and can it be a formula for success moving forward as we get into Big Ten play here starting this week? Indiana's on Wednesday.
I think it can be if they're playing a team that's a little more pressure like Creighton. If they're playing a packed team, I think they may have to shoot a little bit more with Tamanaga and those guys that can shoot. But last night, Creighton pressures, and against that pressure, they had a chance to isolate Walker against Kaluma against Kalkbrenner inside, and that game plan just. I was surprised Creighton didn't press a little earlier. I was surprised Creighton didn't go to some straight zone and make a shoot outside. But, Creighton, it's early in the season. Creighton's playing to how they're going to play down the stretch and in their league. So, and like I said, if they would have made 4 or 5 threes like they normally do, a few more, it would have been a different ball game. But we got them on a good day yesterday where they just didn't make open shots. Creighton ran roll and replace, and they hurt us on the roll early. Nebraska adjusted. When you're defending roll and replace, you're making a decision whether to really bump that roll man and take that away and then close out on a shooter, or stay with shooter and try to get enough ball pressure that they can't throw the lob. Well, they were able to complete the lob early, and then Nebraska took that roll away. And fortunately, Creighton missed the shots on the skips over to the shooter that was replacing up in the 3-point line.
Jeff Smith is with us, longtime Nebraska assistant, Hall of Fame high school coach, Hail Varsity Radio, recapping Nebraska's win over Creighton. So the impact of Sam Griesel, we talked this summer when we knew Sammy was coming. You and I have done a lot of ball games over the years where Sam was a focal point and really a leader for some really good Lincoln East teams. Tell me about your reaction to what he's brought to this team so far, and are you surprised it's worked out so well?
I'm a little surprised it happened this early. I thought there might be a little more of an adjustment period to the level of basketball that he came up to, although, North Dakota State still plays a really tough schedule, and that's a good league as well. But what doesn't surprise me is his steadiness, his leadership. He's a very calm player that I think exudes that to the rest of the team. I think he can make plays when he realizes when he needs to make plays. I heard some people at the game, several people at the game here against Boston College, like, Sam's got to shoot more, he's got to do more. Well, Sam's not that kind of a player. Sam wants to get his teammates involved early in the game. Sam's going to take what the defense gives him. But if there's times in the games where he sees that we need some scoring, he'll go try to provide that, and he has the ability to do that. But it looks like he and Derek Walker are a really good, like you said earlier, a great two-man game and have a good feel for each other. But I thought the secret player of the game was Juwan Gary yesterday, because he defended his tail off. He gets 12 points on 5 for 5 shooting, gets 9 rebounds, and he made extra passes where I thought earlier in the year he would shoot his first open look. Yesterday he turned some down, and we ran a little more clock. He got some ball movement, and really Bandamel didn't shoot it as well, but he did the same thing. He defends it, and Bandamel's the one guy besides Sam that can really create at the shot clock. They usually get it in his hands when it's down to 7 seconds, so he can create. So he can do that. So those two guys defensively were MVPs.
Let's go to Creighton for a moment, as they've lost 3 in a row. They're right there against Arizona. Arizona looks Elite 8 good. Texas looks Elite 8 good. And you're going to have your peaks and your valleys. But now it's one thing to lose Maui and then in Austin, but then you come back home. Is this something that could linger longer with Creighton, or do you think Mac will get him to snap out of it?
Oh, I think they'll snap out of it. I think these cycles last, 1 or 2 weeks, and then, you're mentally, you regroup. They get a little rest time, and I think they'll definitely come out of it fairly quick. I'd be surprised if they wouldn't. And they got good shots. They got good threes. They didn't really work for good paint shots like Nebraska did, but they definitely got good threes. And I think they have enough talent. I think they lost a little confidence in those losses to Arizona and Texas. And I don't know if I've ever seen a game like yesterday where Creighton looked like they felt the pressure of being a heavy favorite. Usually they come in with an underdog role against Nebraska, the state school, the Big Ten, and yesterday it didn't look like that. It looked like Nebraska played a little more loose and pressure free, and it looked like Creighton was trying a little too hard. They were supposed to make those threes. They were a 14-point favorite, and here they are down 7 all of a sudden. And I think they panicked a little bit and then just had some poor shooting performances. I think Shireman, Nembhard, and Kaluma went 2 for 21 from the 3-point line. Kaluma, I don't think is a great shooter, but I know Nembhard and Shireman are up in the 40s. So that's, we kind of got lucky on the day yesterday a little bit too.
Well, you make your own luck too, just with the closeouts and the defensive intensity and the rotation. I mean, Creighton was really good at what they do, and that's around the horn. They go find the open shooter, but Nebraska had an answer or a determination more so to close out and at least contest things. Coach, as you look at the Big Ten here, big picture, I know Sparty got stunned by Northwestern. That didn't make Mama or Junior happy. Purdue sits in here at number 4. Iowa's just a one-last squad, and they are really talented. Michigan's scuffling a bit. Indiana's 7-1. You have Illinois tomorrow night. They are on the road at Texas. Don't know much about Minnesota. Wisconsin still has Chucky, and they're always pretty dangerous. What's the cut line as you see it early on in the Big Ten for postseason, and how does Nebraska stack up eye test-wise to a lot of the league?
Yeah, I don't know if I can go cut line yet. I just don't know if I have enough evaluation time, except for I think Indiana and Purdue have shown they're pretty elite. They play with some talented size. They play with some kids who can shoot the ball. They're pretty complete teams. They both play hard. Unfortunately, our next 2 games are maybe against the 2 teams that are playing the best in the league right now. But yeah, I think those 2 have separated. I do feel that with our consistent effort, and I think Nate Linzer's done a great job on the defensive end. I've gone to 3 practices, and he's working his tail off on rotations, on box outs. Him and Coach Howard just really focus on that, and that's paying off. Their rotations yesterday on baseline drives, Creighton knew they couldn't get to the rim. Creighton was smart enough not to really charge that much, but they struggled when they got in that trap on the baseline, and they Nebraska X's out when they help on those skip passes, which you were talking about their closeouts. That's why they're getting there so quick. And if you can play that consistent defense and just rebound a little bit, you're going to stay in games in the Big Ten, because that's kind of what the Big Ten's all about. So I think they're built to compete. I think Blaise Keita off the bench gives them some length, draws charges, can rebound the ball a little bit. Not great offensively skilled, but he'll improve. But he gives you that length off, and you can play a little bigger lineup. And then I think they found a good role for Breidenbach. I think he's a good guy coming off the bench, 6th or 7th man instead of a starter, and maybe he can settle in and shoot the ball a little better coming off the bench. But again, another 6'11", 6'10", 6'11" kid. He had a big block yesterday, late in the second half, which just made some good plays. And so with that length, which is huge in basketball, with the kind of length we have now, especially with Sam at the point,
Coach,
I think that's going to help us compete.
I gotta cut you off. Forgive me. We're up against a hard break. Hang on with us another 5 minutes,
all
okay?
Right. Yeah, no problem.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Couple more minutes, some overtime here with Jeff Smith, Hall of Fame coach, longtime Nebraska assistant, Nebraska Creighton. Coach, thanks for resetting with us. We were asking big picture in the Big Ten. We'll let you pick it up from there. Didn't mean to interrupt to get to break.
Oh, that's okay. And I forgot to mention Maryland's 8-0, but they haven't, and Michigan State's 5-4, but Michigan State's played about 6 top 10 teams, and Maryland hasn't played one yet. So, it'll balance out as we go. And I just think Nebraska is a little more with their length and their depth. They are built better and their defensive consistency. If that continues, they're definitely built for the Big Ten at a higher level than they have been since Fred's been here.
Coach, what did yesterday's win mean for Fred Hoiberg? We know that year 4 has expectations, and it can't look like the first 3 years, and the team doesn't look like the same team. They're gritty, they're poised, they're tough, they're physical, they're blue collar, which is great. And he's made that roster shift, but when it comes to the job and job security, this is absolutely a wonderful way to start December.
Yeah, I think it gives you some confirmation that you are on the right path, adding more defensive emphasis. And really, I think they purposely went and got guys that had won. Keita won big in junior college. Juwan Gary was in the NCAA tournament at Alabama. Griesel, NCAA tournament at North Dakota State. Vandemel, SMU has been good. Walker from Tennessee a few years ago. You've got some kids that have won and kind of been in some of those big tournaments, those big games. And I think he's got to be really happy with his character and how they handled any runs yesterday and had more poise with the ball than they did against St. John's, when they were getting pressed and late in the game. So that was another improvement. So I think, if anything, it's just some good confirmation for Fred that they're doing the right things. The shift they made on offense, he says in the ballroom at the hotel, has paid off using Walker's skills and everybody's skills. And so I think that's a good confirmation game for him, and obviously takes a little pressure off of him that they could win on the road against a top 10 team.
Did yesterday change your expectations surrounding this Husker basketball team for the year?
When we were on before the season started, I said I hope 15. Maybe it's going to be 12, but if they can win 8 games in the non-con and then another 8 or 7 in the conference and win 15, 16 games, I felt like that was the upper limit. I wouldn't want to jump too high yet. I think it's kind of a wait and see thing. But obviously you do have a little more confidence that they're developing. They're more consistent. They play together. They're starting to really learn to play unselfish basketball and not worry about how many shots they're getting. And so I think that has to breed a little optimism.
Next 3, Coach, what's a good number? This 4-game stretch, many of us didn't have Nebraska going 2-2 or better. They still may not, but
most of us had it as 0-4, most likely.
Possibly, but K-State's probably gettable. And is it crazy? Yeah. Is it crazy to think you can get a split? I mean, I know you got Purdue at home Saturday. Indiana's first things first. Or you like 2-2 is the number?
Yeah, I'll stick with 2-2. I would hope. I think Indiana on the roads, although we've played okay there, I just think that's a tough environment, and they're playing well right now. I think Purdue with the 7-4 kid is just a totally different animal. Not that we can't play with them, but safely 2-2. At a minimum, let's say. And if we can sneak one, that would be absolutely fantastic. If we can sneak one of these next 2.
Coach, you get a chance to watch the Nebraska women yesterday as they took on number 20 Maryland, a huge fourth quarter propelled them to victory as they won 90-67. You get a chance to watch that one?
I didn't get to watch it. I watched highlights and read the article today. They shot the ball well, and Jazz Shelley kind of went off yesterday. It sounded like they wanted her to do more, and she did. And then she's got some weapons that they went through a little. They didn't shoot the ball well at Drake, and they I think that was talk about a confidence win. We haven't beaten Maryland since I don't know when or ever, but I went and watched them practice a couple weeks ago. They do Coach Williams such a great job of just fundamentals, and they're going to be okay. They're going to when they shoot the ball in the hole, they're going to be able to beat anybody, and they play as hard as anybody. And I think with Jazz Shelley at the point, they've got a chance against anybody.
Jeff Smith with us, Hall of Fame coach, longtime Nebraska assistant. Coach, enjoy your week. We'll get caught up soon. Thanks for the insight today.
Yes, Schmidt, we got to talk about high school ball one of these days, you know.
Well, you got 2 more minutes? We can do that.
I do.
All right.
I do.
What do you think? I mean, Lincoln's looking pretty good, man. Southeast and Southwest, some wow wins early. I know it was a split weekend for both of them, but hey, the Lincoln prep scene, Omaha's tremendous. We know that, but the Lincoln prep scene looks pretty good this year.
Yeah, Omaha's top-heavy, though. The Lincoln teams can beat a lot of those lower-level Omaha teams. It's just a matter if they can play with Millard North and Bell West. But Southeast beating Westside was missing a few, and that's hard coming off a state football championship and playing this early. But and then North Star goes up and beats Prep, who was preseason third. So, and then Northeast lost a tough one with Gretna in overtime, and Gretna was fifth. So I think Lincoln basketball is really looking better with and they have good size and good athleticism around the city. Lincoln High's 2-0, and they beat Papio, who was preseason ranked. I'm not sure why, but they were. But that's a great start for Lincoln High with Vincent Garrett and Bryson Faines. Pretty good seniors there. And then, Porter Basil's been playing a long time at Northeast, a 6'7" senior there that's getting some recruiting interest. And Jalen Lang's averaging about 17 a game for them. And they got a good freshman, I guess, that plays a little bit, Jackson Cruz. And then, North Star has 2 6'8" kids that are seniors, Brennan Clemens and the San Leonel kid. So, and Southeast is 6'9", 6'8". You and I saw Southwest, some good size and athleticism and a veteran point guard. The city is in pretty good. And then the East beat Southeast after they beat Westside. So, the city's, I think, much improved across the board talent-wise, and I think kind of ready to compete with the big dogs up in the Metro.
Man, that'll be fun, and you're going to get some inter-metro matchups as the year goes on, as you'll have a chance throughout the regular season to prove it. Then you get into districts, and then could be a really fun year for Lincoln schools at PBA this year.
Well, I'm just salivating at some of the inner-city matchups we're going to have coming later in the regular season. Yeah,
that'll be outstanding.
Exactly. You look at Southeast, Southwest, they match up across the board pretty well, and Northeast is not going to they're not going to back down to anybody, and North Star, if they're playing right with those 2 seniors, that they have a few kids can shoot the ball, they can beat anybody in the city. And you're right, Elijah. There's going to be some really solid city battles.
Going to be a good time, and Coach Smith does color for us here locally in Lincoln. Excited to do another year with you. Coach, we'll dive in again. This was fun to talk some ball, and always appreciate your time.
Anytime, Schmitty.
Take care. There he is, Hall of Fame coach Jeff Smith, longtime assistant with Nebraska during those NCAA tournament runs. And, we talk about keeping local on the football field. Well, Nebraska did it to a T with Coach Smith and Coach Danny Nee. We'll wind down this first hour. Charlie McBride's on the way. It's Hail Varsity, presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
We'll flip gears to some football next hour. More thoughts on Coach Deion Sanders from this is weird saying, a former Buff. Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride. Jay Moore is going to be with us. Reminder to get buckled up this holiday season. Hands on the wheel, eyes in mind. Straight ahead, the driver has one job. That's to drive. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. And we're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. We'll get some feedback here. Brody chimes in. We asked the poll question. How do you feel? What do you feel more excited about? Nebraska's win over Iowa or the upset win over Creighton? A little football, basketball question if you're a Nebraska fan. And Brody's like, the football win over Iowa feels way better. It hadn't been as well, actually. You'd beaten Creighton sooner than you'd beaten Iowa, because Timmy Miles did it, I think, in 2018 with Copeland and company, and that team was loaded for a run and ended up going to the NIT. But yeah, last night was a beautiful rock fight. If you're a Nebraska fan, if you're a Creighton fan, you're all sorts ticked off, but never fear. You've got a loaded lineup to snap out of your slump. Let's hear from.
I'll just say the difference between the two games is Iowa. That was just like a release after a season of hell. To get that one was just like, oh my God. But
you've had 3 seasons of God. These guys don't want to play defense or box out or do the little things, and you saw this team and their personality be way different.
And yesterday, I was just getting there. I was more in a state of shock. I don't think I've still fully registered that Nebraska went and beat Creighton just because it was so unexpected. I mean, of the past 3 seasons, yesterday's game felt like Nebraska stood the least chance with what Creighton brought to the floor. That's potentially the best team that they'll ever have in school history if they end up living up to their potential as the year goes on. That team is very, very good, and I wrote Nebraska off before the game even started.
I think most of us did, and the thing that Mac will no doubt use yesterday, it's a wake-up call, right? Okay, and listen, I'm not making excuses for them, but you travel to Maui, then you go to Austin. You've drilled this Nebraska team, and a lot of time you got to respect the game, right? Just because you've drilled them by 25 before the first time out the last few years. New year, new team. Let's hear from Sam Griesel. What last night meant for him. Really awesome seeing a Sam hugging his folks up at CHI.
When I committed here, like, this was the game that I wanted the most, obviously, for a lot of reasons. I was just talking to some of the staff members that have been here for a long time, whatever, 15, 20 years, and just thinking back to players that I idolized that wore this jersey that didn't get this win, and especially in this arena. Obviously, I just walking around Lincoln, everyone's just like, just beat Creighton this year, just beat Creighton this year, and it'll be nice to have a good response to that now. But I mean, yeah, it's hard to put into words. I get a little bit emotional thinking about it just because it means so much to me and so much to this group and to the state. But this is a day that I'll remember for the rest of my life.
Pretty cool. And Nebraska fans won't forget. Vic chimes in from Denver, and he's like, not even Dion can save Colorado, and the apathy that exists for that football program. Kind of disagree.
If there's anyone that can do it, it is Dion.
Prime. Charlie McBride's up next at Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency, also streaming on ESPN Lincoln, Facebook, and Twitter. And the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter at HVarsity Radio, and the ESPN 590 Twitter handle as well. Get to some of your emails and your calls. It is that time. It's a Monday with Charlie, Mr. Blackshirt. Charlie McBride joins us. Coach, how was the weekend? Thanks for the time.
Oh, it was good. Beautiful. A little cold, but that's good. It wasn't too cold.
You probably weren't wearing sleeves, were you?
No, I was raking leaves still.
Man. Well, that's a win. So is it, do you still fish this time of year, or do you stay off the water?
Well, they what they did, I do, but they took my dock in early, and usually I'm out there, but the state is fixing the public access, and so the regular guys that come in with their boats and stuff, they got a bunch of pro fishermen around this area, and they fish this lake a lot, and they can't get their boats in for another week or so, so as long as it doesn't freeze, they'll be here.
Well, that's good. Well, Coach, a week ago we were talking about Matt Rule and his introduction to Nebraska. We fast forward to today, and you and I both have always been high on in-state talent. I liked watching it growing up. You liked coaching it. And Matt Rule has put a ton of time and effort and resource since he got here to be in front of the coaches around the state of Nebraska and be in front of the kids. It's been really pretty impressive. What are your thoughts?
I think that's pretty impressive. I think that's exactly what needs to be done. I think a lot of times, he hasn't got his staff full yet, but he's doing the best he can do with what's going on now. And he's making an impression, and I think it makes a difference that the coaches know that you really care about the state, because I think there's been a drop-off, and there hasn't been enough schools visited. I know that I don't think anybody's ever worked harder than Tom ever did. He'd go out by himself and see every walk-on, every scholarship guy, before the signing, and himself. And he'd come back and he looked like somebody dragged him through the mud or something. But he didn't. He wanted to. That's what he wanted to do. And then at the beginning of the year, the first week, he is in the state by himself. A lot of times, I don't know anybody that's gone with him. He does it himself, and he worked at it. And I think this is a good thing. I think he'll be happy with it.
Charlie McBride's with us, Hail Varsity Radio on Monday with Charlie. Coach, Nebraska is up to 11 kids now in the transfer portal. One of them's Ernest Hausman. You have some kids that have been in the program 3 years. One's a lineman, Alex Kahn, and a couple of other kids, Tariq Black and Weaver, that was going to make a switch from defense to offense. So really the name is Hausman. That's tough to take, but a lot of kids are moving on. Nebraska's also looking at portal additions, and I know there's a bunch of kids from Texas A&M that may be on their way out. Give me a thought on retention on this roster, and then also fishing. We started the talk with fishing, but Nebraska's going to have to throw their line in the water for some kids that may be wanting to get out.
Well, I think the thing is my experience with. I look at it as just a kid that transfers, and he's got an easier way to go this time. He can just do it whenever he wants, and the thing that's sad is he can do it in the middle of spring practice if he feels like it's not right. And so you never know where your football team is. I don't care whether you're the top team in the country or whatever you are, you don't know where it is, which is, I think, really unfair, but that's life in the big city. I think, too, that the other thing I noticed over all the years when I've seen kids leave, I've never heard their name again. And, that's, I tell you what, a commitment to me is a lot different than what it is today. Today, the commitment is nothing. Basically, for some kids, it's a lie. They may say they're coming 1 minute and the next minute they're not. And, the best way to do it is don't ever say anything you got to take back until you're really sure. And we used to prep the parents on what we wanted. And, in fact, when a kid committed to us, there was no phone calls. The parents would not let anybody talk to the kid. Coach would not let them talk, and there was, it was serious. And because when you commit to somebody, we really wanted them to, for a kid to come in on a weekend and be fired up and everything and commit is not something that is really healthy, because you really you like it, but you don't want them to go home and in 2 days say, I got to think this over. And you want it so they don't have to think it over. It's done. Now with the situation the way it is now, there's a little bit different. I think it's a little different, but to me, you pick a school because of the school and the program and everything. You don't pick it because of the guy that recruited you. That's weak. To me, that guy could be gone. I know when I went out the last few years, I just told the parents I will not be here when your son graduates.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm going to retire in a couple of years, and so that they knew it exactly where I stood. And a lot of times you don't know. As a assistant coach doesn't know when he's about ready to leave when he's a young guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like my wife always said, there's only two kinds of coaches: those that have been fired and those that are about to be.
Mm.
So so it's the coaching profession. It's a little shaky, how it goes. But that's just the way it is. And Houseman thing happened so fast that there's been some tampering.
Mm.
There's something going on there because you don't just that doesn't happen that fast. I mean, he's got something planned, and you haven't heard anything from him. He's already told somebody where he's going. I'm pretty sure of that, and they've told him how much money, and they've told him what they're going to do for him. And, again, that's another, here's a state kid that, leaves the state. That bothers me.
He's really good, too. I mean, he really got better.
Well, he's a special kid. He's got a chance to really do something at this state, where he's from.
Mm-hmm.
And again, he may be one of those guys that say, "Well, I'm really from Texas, and I don't, this or that," and that's great. But it's hard when you lose a person that you think, and as successful as he was, he's a worker. He's everything you're looking for. But then when this happens, now you're wondering, what? Wait a minute, is this guy, what about his character? I mean, what about, is it that, or is it just something that he just doesn't like something?
I think losing Rude, if Rude's not anywhere around the program's a big thing. I think losing Barrett's not good for the linebackers.
I can tell you one thing. If you had to come in here and kept Bill and Mickey, and Mickey, and Rude, if that was the case, but whoever had done it, and there wouldn't be the problems that we're having right now. I mean, and I'm not blaming it on the head coach because he has what he wants to do, and that's just the way it is. I have no qualms with that. I mean, I think he has the right to do it, just like a kid has the right to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And So that's the thing. I just like loyalty, and I like when a guy shakes your hand and says, "I'm coming,"
mm-hmm.
and he really means it, and that makes that as a coach and a recruiter, that's what it is. And I know when I came here, I will say this, that Tom sat me down and explained what my job was, and he said, "Number one, you're a recruiter."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Number two, you're a coach. And number three, if you cheat, you're fired." That's pretty simple,
1, 2, 3 bullet points. Absolutely.
That's right.
Let me ask you about Deion Sanders going to your alma mater, Colorado.
Well, the one thing about Colorado you want to be careful of is when you're doing it is the admission system there is really different than it is a lot of places. If I'm not mistaken, there's only one person that accepts or denies in that school, and that's some professor or somebody, whoever's doing it. They don't have a big committee or have all this stuff, I don't think, or at least they didn't. They may now. They may have it changed. A lot of presidents change stuff. So, but it used to be where there was just one professor, and he was the guy, and it was him or nothing,
Mm-hmm.
And so when your grades come in, I think the NCAA situations with all their changing rules and stuff probably confused a lot of people, especially him, because his major thing is the student body, period. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, when athletes, you have to really pay special attention to some of those people, and some of them, you want them on campus. I know that some schools have said, well, if he meets the NCAA rules, that's fine, But if he has any shortness in any of the classes, he has to finish them within the first year. Now, that's one of the things I think we have at Nebraska. I know a lot of kids didn't have a math thing or, a missing an English part or didn't accept. They had the English, but didn't accept a course in your English class. Like I know one kid, for example, had an advertising writing for advertising and stuff, and they didn't accept it. And he had to go to junior college in the summer in his hometown. So there's so many little things that happen that you don't expect right away. And
can he get him to win?
Anytime you're transferring, you got to be careful.
Can Dion get Colorado to win football games again?
I think so. I think he'll get a lot of. He's really a guy that'll be looking hard for a minority kid, and he'll probably have that quarterback there. I'm sure he will. I mean that they've already, unless NIL has got them locked up there and say, hey, wait a second now, So I don't know. I don't know how that goes, but I'm sure he'll have some followers that'll come, from Jackson State that he'll accept or at least try to get there, assuming they have the grades and everything.
Well, he told the team yesterday that he was bringing his own luggage.
Yeah, he made no bones about that meeting last night that half of you are going to walk out of here. I mean, he was up front and I don't want to say vicious, but he wasn't friendly.
Yeah, well, he
cleaning house.
Yeah, well, that can be, and it'll, it may take him a year or two, and then again he may cross people the wrong way, and that reflects back on, hiring a guy that really has only been a coach for 2 years, and there's a lot of coaches that probably, I don't know this for a fact, but that are probably pretty upset that they're working their tails off to get somewhere, and here's a guy just walks in, and because of who he is, he's all of a sudden he's a coach. But I've always found out that the guys that, I played 12 years in the NFL, so what? That doesn't make you a good teacher. And and a lot of times that stuff he's teaching or stuff that you don't use or can't use, or the other coach doesn't want you to use, and so there's a lot of things that go into into coaching, and most of them went through the whole thing. There's graduate assistant, learn the next job, that's how you become a coach is by paying attention, keeping your mouth shut, and listening.
Well, he is going to bring some bravado, and I know there's a lot of juice for Colorado, and they're already trying to keep the Nebraska Red out on September 9th. So Nebraska will not do a favor, and I'm sure that'll be all red.
Well, let me tell you, I graduated from that school.
That's cool.
And if I had something to say about it, I wouldn't be the happy camper.
There he is, Charlie McBride, with us on Monday with Charlie. Coach, we'll talk some bowl matchups and more Nebraska news next week. You have a good week, and thank you for a few minutes today.
Okay, guys, have fun this week. Okay.
You too.
Try to last through a few of them, okay?
We will. Appreciate you, Coach.
Thanks for having me. Bye now.
There he is, Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride. Jay Moore on the way with Hail Varsity.
All-State, 2-year starter, and rush in for the Big Red and NFL vet.
Is Dudeness or Duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
It's Blackshirt Jay Moore with Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it, it's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Blackshirt Husker NFLer Jay Moore, co-host Big Red Wrap-Up. And we say hi to Jay. Bird, you're not in the portal, are you?
No, I am not. I thought about it for a sec, but I thought I might have one more year of eligibility with COVID, but then I realized I am 39 years old and not in the playing shape I used to be. Gosh, how long ago is that now? was that 16 years ago?
You
How about that?
were drafted in 07. I know that.
Yeah.
Because somebody in the room made a phone call to your home on draft day.
Well, I don't know. Something tells me Jake could still roll in some NIL deals if he wants to.
I think so. We're not your agent, but we sure as hell could be.
Well, I mean, with the last name like Moore, you can really fit that into any sort of advertising tagline.
One would like to think so, but that's I can only imagine. I'd take about anything. I tell you that much.
Well, you were an in-state prospect, highly rated defensive lineman, and you started the number of years at Nebraska, top 10 in TFLs and sacks. And I want to get your perspective on the job Coach Rule is doing, specifically this past weekend, where he and his staff have been everywhere, from Scottsbluff to Omaha to Lincoln to Norfolk, all areas in between. And what's your view and take on in-state recruiting and the face time the Nebraska program still needs to put in for that?
You got to put a little more work into it than what we've had to, and I would probably say decades past, just because the program isn't where it has once been. There was almost a given that, and you can throw me right into this, a category that you offered an in-state kid, and 9 times out of 10, that kid's going to say yes, because he wants to stay home. He wants to play for a blue blood program, a top 10 program, a program that's fighting has a good chance to win a conference title every year and potentially play for a national championship. And if you don't, you're playing in a New Year's Day, bowl game, or a very highly competitive bowl game. And so the effort, I don't know if I don't want to say effort, because I think the effort was always there, but it just wasn't to the extent that you have to see it now. I mean, and partially is because you got a new staff. They want to get in front of the kids and to make sure they're not thinking about going somewhere else or taking other visits or whatever it might be. But it is slightly different, just because Nebraska isn't what it was. I mean, I was, when I was being recruited by Nebraska, I mean, the year before that I, went to Nebraska, I got on campus. I mean, they played Miami for a national championship. And the year before that, they won a conference championship in the year 2000 and beat Texas. I believe they smoked Tennessee in the Fiesta Bowl, and just so on and so forth. So the credibility and just what you knew Nebraska as was still there, into the early 2000s. And I will say that part of Nebraska's, I think, struggles, maybe while I was there and maybe during Bo's time, was the in-state recruiting just wasn't as good as it had been. There was years where you're able to get 5 to 6 kids Division I offers, and I think there was a stretch there where that wasn't happening. And that's not to blame the kids; it's just a cyclical thing that just happens in a state like this where it's not heavily populated. So now, looking at it, I mean, the state is loaded with talent, and it's been loaded with talent for the last 5-6 years, and unfortunately, Nebraska has not been able to keep some of these kids in state. You've had kids go to Notre Dame, you have kids go to Oregon, Kansas State, so on and so forth, and it's frustrating for a homegrown kid like myself to see that happen. But then again, I can't blame them, because they're going to places that they know they have a chance to win and a chance to get to the next level. And Matt Rule's already alluded at that you come play for us, you're not only get to the NFL, you're going to have a chance to get a second contract. So there's a lot of steps to all this process, but they've done a good job. You have the resources, you have private planes to get you all over God's green earth and in the great state of Nebraska. You can fly to Norfolk and Scottsbluff in one day, and that's not a problem for them when you're on a private jet. And then you hop in. I mean, you hop in here and there's plenty of good kids. You got Malachi Coleman over at Lincoln East. You have the kid over at Lincoln High that's committed to Iowa State. You have obviously all the kids up at West Side and the Omaha area. So it doesn't take much effort to whether you're going to hop in a plane real quick or hop in a car. And it's just part of it, especially with the new faces. You got to get there. You got to get ahead of it and really start selling your plan and your ideas going forward for what this program's going to be and how they're going to be able to fit within that program going forward.
Jay, I think a lot of people point to the winning as one of the in-state factors of why kids aren't coming here. But I also look at the fact that, I mean, there's not many kids from Nebraska, both from in-state kids and just guys within the Husker football program that are getting drafted recently. And that's a big consideration here whenever you look at in-state kids that are getting drafted by going to other colleges. I look at Harrison Phillips as a one big example that played really well yesterday in his game. But I believe Cam Jurgens is the only guy from the state of Nebraska to get drafted in the past 5 years. So how big of a factor is that just in the grander scheme of college football, being able to go and develop guys and send them to the next level?
Yeah, it's interesting because, when I got recruited, my thought was not about, well, if I go to Nebraska, is it a good chance for me to go to the NFL? I mean, that was so far down the list of my concerns, because when I was recruited, I could either play defensive end or tight end. I chose to play defensive end just because of what I'd known growing up, the Grant Wistроms and the Jared Thomases and the Kyle Vandenbosch. And yes, those guys did go on to play the NFL, so that was a little bit of my thought. But once I stepped foot on campus, man, the idea of going to the NFL was so far down the line. I was just trying to keep my head above water and just learn and get better every day. And then just because of the process and sticking with the process, I was able to achieve that goal. That wasn't even a thought until after my junior year. I finally had a really good junior year, and then I had agents and I had a draftable grade and all that stuff. I'm like, oh wow, this is really a possibility. So for me, I can't really speak to some of those kids, but it has something to do with that. But I have a hard time thinking. It comes down to, it does help to be on a winning program. That does increase your chances. You get more eyeballs on games. You get more scouts that are checking out what you're doing, and so that does help. I think it just matters from the kids from their perspective. My main goal, just a childhood goal since I can remember, was to play football at Nebraska, and it was never like, hey, I wanted to be in the NFL. That was just a part of me kind of developing into a better player, and the NFL became an opportunity. So it's a nice thing to have. It's a nice kind of feather in your cap to say, hey, we've had, like Rule, we've had X amount of guys from Temple. We have X amount of guys from Baylor who are still playing, and these are the guys I coach and develop. So there's a little bit to that, but I think it's something that I have a hard time believing that's what you're truly concerned about, because it's so far down the road. You have to go there. It has to be a good fit for you personally. Your college has to be a good fit for you personally, academically. Those are the most important things. Because if you go there and you're not comfortable, you're not going to be able to put forth all the effort to dive into that process of being a good football player. Your mind's going to be somewhere else. You're going to be homesick. You might do all these other things. So I think there's so many other variables that are more important than, hey, can I get drafted in the NFL? I think there's about 5 or 6 that are more important to make sure this college is the right fit for the kid. And then if those things fit, then you can start putting all your efforts and, maybe your eggs into one basket to become a really good football player that with hopes to get drafted.
Jay Moore is with us, Hail Varsity Radio. A thought from you, it doesn't look like, and we're still not fully fully full. You don't know who the D coordinator is going to be for Nebraska as we talk. Dvoracek sounds like the linebacker coach, and then a couple of spots offensive line, wide receivers coach still up in the air offensively. Tell me about your friend Barrett Ruud and what do you think is next for him?
Yeah, it's tough because he hasn't been coaching very long. I think he retired from the NFL, 6 years ago, maybe even less than that. He obviously got a good opportunity to go right to Central Florida and learn from Scott Frost and follow them here. And he's had some, obviously, Nebraska ties all the way through. And you come here to coach at your alma mater, and you live in the city you grew up in, and being a Southeast kid. So I don't know. I know Barrett loves football. He is a football guy. He loves the game. You got to love the game to coach at this level. I just don't know if he loves it enough to go coach somewhere else or be a part of it. I guess I just don't. I know Barrett very well, but I don't know if that's like who he is to be like, man, because you hear Matt Rule talk. He loves developing young men, and so I just don't know if that's Barrett's true, MO. going forward. Or, I know Barrett has, he played many, many years in the NFL, made some good money coaching. The guy's got money, so I don't think it's like he needs to go and look around. He's not hopping on the next job because he needs the money. The dude is tighter than you know what. So I know he's taking care of his money. So he don't spend it. I know that much. He does not like to spend his money, and that's okay. That's totally fine. So I don't think he's going to be out there, looking for the next open job to hop on for the money. I think he could probably maybe take a year or two off, and he has a few kids and sit down and really decide. Maybe once he's away from it, hey, let's if he misses it, let's maybe look at an opportunity. But again, it's like, you know what? Coaching is a crazy business because you're talking about uprooting your family again, and you're kind of already back in your hometown, and you moved away once, and now you're back, and so it's got to be. I would assume it has to be the right kind of fit for him. I don't know if the NFL, if he'd like to get in that level of coach. I almost feel like Barrett would be a better coach in the NFL than he would probably be in college, just because from the X's and O's standpoint, and you kind of get out of recruiting, it's just straight football. I think Barrett would do very, very well in the NFL if he wants that, and he has tons of connections in the NFL. I know he's close with like Raheem Morris and a lot of the Tampa Bay staff that's out and about and just litter amongst the NFL still. So he could get a job in the NFL, no problem. It's just whether or not he wants to do that and kind of move his family away. But Barrett is, man, just a good dude. Unfortunately, I'd love to still have him be on staff because I know where his heart is and is with Nebraska. And I think that takes a special coach to coach that and get it across to your players. But if it doesn't work out, I mean, he definitely has options to do whatever he wants. But I think the guy could, probably take a year or two off and kind of to weigh his decisions to see what's best for him and his family.
And now back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Jay Moore is with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Okay, your take on Coach Prime, Deion Sanders at Colorado. That's going to be just an incredible week 2, as we'll be out there for it. Colorado is saying no red in the stands. Good luck with that, Boulder.
Yep.
But his impact, and do you think he tries to mess with in the recruiting world where Nebraska's at? Does he find his way in to a West Side? Does he look at some kids in the Metro, or dare I say way out West? It doesn't sound like he's going to leave a stone unturned. What do you think of the hire?
I think it's a great hire. I think he fits well with Colorado. I think, people see, remember Deion as a player and obviously very vocal, very flashy. But when he talks, and you saw the video of him speaking to, his team, and you've seen talks with the previous school he was at, and you've seen him the man has a gift to communicate and get a message across. And it's very, he speaks like, he's preaching again, like we kind of similar with Matt Rule. That's very powerful. I mean, just the way he talked to I know the whole team wasn't there in Colorado, but how many kids were still in town, it's powerful, man. He has it, and he says it. He has the credibility. He knows how to be great because he was great. I mean, he's the greatest cornerback ever to play the game of football. So he has that credibility, and then he has the ability to communicate to young men, kids, so he's able to recruit. And so I don't know. I mean, Colorado was a mess this year, and they haven't been great since Barnett left. And so they have some work to cut out. They have the work cut out for them and to figure out to get this thing back to where it was, back to the essentially how they played in the Big 12, where they were tough, man. I mean, we play them, and it was a 50-50 game every Friday after Thanksgiving, battling them. So he's got his work cut out, but I think he'll get that thing turned. He's going to recruit his tail off. He's going to get some really good players. He's probably going to bring some kids with him from Jackson State, and then go out and nab a few other guys, and guys will come and play. He's going to be able to speak to the skill position players very, very much so. I know he threw out an offer to one of the 5-star tackle that's come into Iowa. He's out of Texas. So he knows what he's doing. If he can land a guy like that, that will turn around that program in a heartbeat. You get your offensive linemen. You know how I feel about my O-line and D-linemen, how important they are to the program. But really good hire. It'll be fun to go out there week 2. Hopefully we're both 1-0 going in week 2, and maybe I'll have to make that that little drive or a quick plane ride out to Denver to even enjoy that one.
Hop in the back seat.
Oh, we're renting an armored vehicle.
Yeah. Babbers is renting a tank.
I love that.
He's renting a tank so they can have all the fun with the windshield and rims as they used to have, right? And it's still it's going to be a Desert Eagle tank, so it'll stand up to about everything.
Love that.
Jay, what's your take on this, the difference in Matt Rule and Deion Sanders and how they approached their team whenever they first took the job? Matt Rule saying, you know what, I came here, I took this job to coach you guys, whereas Deion Sanders says, if you guys aren't willing to work, just go into the transfer portal right now. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I'm in favor of both of them. I can see it from both sides. I know Deion, and I think Deion's probably speaking to they had, I don't know how many games. Did Colorado win more than 2 games this year? I don't know.
They were 1-11.
Yeah, so there's some cultural issues going on in Colorado. I'm talking the ability to have some toughness, to be able to fight and and hang in there. They didn't do it. And on the flip side, Nebraska, once Scott was removed, Mickey was able to capture this team and the energy and fight. That was there. They fought their tails off, these last 9 games with Mickey. The Oklahoma game, it was debatable. It was just a crazy situation. But after that, man, their effort defensively, was just able to compete and fight. And other than the Michigan game, I mean, they were in every football game. That can't be said for Colorado. So I think it's vastly different. 2 different situations where I think the character and the understanding how to work is there at Nebraska. It just has to be in a different message, and it has to be more efficient and better understood and stick with that process. Whereas Colorado, they don't have one. They don't know what's up or down right now, and they just were just out there because they had to be. There wasn't a whole lot of fight going in Colorado. So I kind of see where Deion's coming from that side of things.
Jay, get a switch to the NFL before we say goodbye. And your roomie again, 3-0 against Kansas City. Zach Taylor and Cincy getting it done against the Chiefs, and Joe Cool making a few key passes. P. Ryan stepping up with Mixon out, and Cincinnati's got some momentum, man.
They do, and they got the best player back too, with Chase finally being available this week, and that's been the most impressive thing, is just their ability to win football games without him. I think they lost him for 5 or 6 weeks with a hip injury, and they go down to Tennessee and win the week before. So their defense is playing really, really good. But yeah, Joe Burrow, man, he is just so cool and calm, and so many other receivers have stepped up there. Higgins has stepped up a bunch. P. Ryan and Nixon have been huge, catching balls out of the backfield and being able to establish the run. Their tight end game has been really good. So it's been so fun to watch, because they started off slow. I think they're 0-2, and then with Jamar Chase being banged up, you're like, oh boy, how are they going to get through this? It's like, man, now I think they're tied with Baltimore. I think they're both 7-4. Baltimore has a tiebreaker right now, but I know they have one more. They each got to play each other one more time. So it's gonna be fun to see finish out, man. But it just shows you Zach knows what he's doing. He's got a great staff around him. He's got one of the best, if not the best, quarterback in the NFL. You could probably argue him and Mahomes are kind of 1A, 1B right now, and it's gonna be fun. I hope to have another matchup, whether it's in Cincinnati or Kansas City again. I'd love to be in Kansas City again, because that was fun driving down to them, going to the game last year. So, but yeah, it's a blast to watch. I've definitely become a Bengals fan. I got Bengals hats and sweatshirts, and I'm chanting out Hurrdat and all this stuff. So it's been a fun ride.
Did you get him sent to you, or have you had to pony up?
No, I'm like, I probably could text them and say, hey, Zach, send me some gear, would you? But I'm that guy that doesn't want to bug them. So sure. No, I begrudgingly bought a sweatshirt and a hat. And that's fine. So
that's all right.
I'll hit them up. I mean, now that I talked to him a handful of times this last year, I'll hit them up, and I just need to go out there and see them, and then that way I'll just take me to the office. Let's go down to the equipment room so I can rock some some team issue Bengal stuff back in Lincoln. That's the main plan.
Jay shows up with a shopping cart in the equipment room. You're going to pick your spot. Next Super Bowl they get to is when you hammer them.
Yeah.
I need 4 together, 50-yard line, please. Thank you.
And then you go down to the team locker room with a duffel bag and a ski mask. Just take what you want.
Jay Moore is with us, co-host Big Red Wrap-Up, Husker NFLer, black shirt at JMoore44 on Twitter. Jay, be good. Have a good week, man. Thanks for the time.
You bet. Thanks, fellas.
Good stuff from Black Shirt Husker NFLer Jay Moore. We'll wind down a Monday podcast for you. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play for Hail Varsity Radio. Also the Hail Varsity YouTube channel.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, Hail Varsity Radio presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Well, the College Football Playoff Committee got their job done and done right. TCU is in. Ohio State is in. Kevin Wilson is off to coach Tulsa. So that means they will not have an offensive coordinator at Ohio State. They will lock horns with the number one team in the land. And that should be all right. Georgia's fun. Hopefully you took the overs. And Ohio State can do some things. I mean, LSU, they'd be able to get more stops. Would have had a better shot. But Ohio State's offense and LSU's offense, somewhat comparable. No Smith and Jigba, though, for Ohio State on New Year's Eve.
The only thing I'll say, I agree with the 4. The only thing I would say is that based on what I've seen this year, I think Ohio State's better than TCU. I'd put them at 3, but I understand why you can't do that, not only because Ohio State didn't make a conference title game, but also because you can't have Ohio State v. Michigan in the semifinal. You just can't do that. You have to have Michigan, TCU, and then Ohio State, Georgia. So I do feel for Georgia a little bit. I feel like they have a much better chance against TCU than against Ohio State. I probably think they're probably going to get a win no matter who they play between those two, but that is my one gripe with this is I do think Ohio State, based on resume this year, based on what I've seen from them, are probably the 3rd best team in the country, but I can understand from a college football playoff committee point of view why you don't put them 3rd.
Were you wore out by Saban doing the tour on Fox?
I get it.
Well, here's the thing, though. He went on and said, you just lost to a bad team in the conference title game.
And then they're going to go play
Sugar Bowl. What if Adrian goes and beats Alabama?
Good for Adrian. I'd love that.
Right? I mean, think about the quarterback triangle here the last 5 years. You pass on Burrow twice. Max Duggan was recruited in 2017, but you didn't get him. He went to TCU. And then there's Adrian. All 3 of those dudes. Duggan's probably going to end up in New York playing in the college football playoff. K-State had a hell of a good year and won the Big 12. Adrian was responsible for half of that. I know he got dinged.
Well, he got credited post-game from Coach Kleiman saying we wouldn't be here without Adrian and his mentorship.
Right. And if he's healthy, I assume he'll be back to start the Sugar Bowl.
It's a tough decision for Kleiman.
Yeah. Play both of them. Pull a 95 Orange Bowl.
Sure.
Play both of them. And then you have, Joe Burrow's just kicking butt on Sundays against Patrick Mahomes. So, yeah, you know what, a rough run. So you think Collins could be the name we hear soon as DC?
There's smoke that way. There's smoke
Jeff
that
Collins,
way
former head coach, Georgia Tech.
Both on insider sources and as well as him going and following most of the Husker coaching staff on Twitter. I think we're moving that way. Jeff Collins fired from Georgia Tech this year. He was the head coach at Temple following Matt Rule. And now he's jobless.
Then left Temple for Georgia Tech because he maintained at Temple. Well, back tomorrow. Matt Schick will join us. We'll talk Dr. Pepper etiquette, and our friend Mitch Sherman will be with us.